All right, in this lecture, we're going to be learning about two-point perspective. So as you can imagine, two-point perspective is very similar to one-point perspective. The difference is that there's two vanishing points instead of one. So let's go ahead and let's start drawing this and try to understand how this works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw our horizon line. So let's just keep it in the center like we did before. Just draw it straight across like this. And I'm drawing this on a new layer, so that way I'm not drawing it right onto my background. This is a good habit to get into, is to make sure that you're always drawing things on different layers. That way you have full control over it. Next, let's go ahead and let's add in our first vanishing point. So our first vanishing point, we're just going to add it right over here on the left side. Then we're going to do the same thing for our right vanishing point. We're going to add it clear out over here. Now you can add your vanishing points anywhere on your horizon line. It's really up to you. Once you start experimenting with drawing in perspective, you'll notice that the closer you put those vanishing points, the more extreme it's going to look. So typically, the further apart you can put those vanishing points, the better. And you'll see later in our example that usually your vanishing points will actually be off your actual canvas. So you might have to draw your canvas larger, so that way your vanishing points can actually be on the outside of where the frame of your painting is. So once we have those two vanishing points, let's go ahead and let's draw a straight line. So we're just going to draw a simple straight line, and we want it to start above the horizon line. Whoops. So let's just draw it like that. And just like with the one-point perspective, we want to attach our vanishing points to the lines or edges of our shape. But in this case, we're not just going to get a perfectly straight square like this. Well, that's not really straight, but you get the idea. We're not going to get a square that just runs off to the vanishing point. We actually are going to have perspective on both planes. So let's go ahead and undo that. The way we get that perspective is by connecting it back to both of our vanishing points. So we'll connect from here to here, just like that. We'll do the same thing over here. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. Just like that. And then we can go ahead and decide where we want the edge of our cube to be on this side. So let's say we want this to stop right about here. We'll do the same thing on this side. And so now we have a cube. If we want, we can go ahead and erase these lines just so we can see our cube a little bit better. Let me switch over to something without opacity for the eraser. It'll make this much quicker to erase. All right, there we go. So you can see that now we have this cube, and rather than just having a flat square surface and then the other side of the cube going off into perspective, both sides are going off to a vanishing point. Now, usually this is what perspective is actually going to look like in real life. You will sometimes get one-point perspective, such as when you're looking down a street, but typically you're actually going to want to draw most things in two-point perspective because you're going to be seeing both surfaces more in perspective. You're not just going to be looking straight onto one surface and then one side will be going off into a vanishing point. Usually both sides of a surface will be going off to a vanishing point. So let's go ahead and let's try drawing a few more shapes. So let's say we wanted to draw a square type shape up here above the horizon line so we can see the bottom surface. And actually let's do it below so you can see that we can see the top surface of this shape, because we already saw in the last lecture how we can see the bottom surface. But if we do it on the draw it below the horizon line, so if I draw a line like this, we're going to actually see the top surface of this cube. So I'll go ahead and connect these back to my vanishing points. We'll go ahead and draw these lines here. So one there and one there. Now when you're drawing this perspective for simple cubes and stuff like that, it's important that you make sure that your lines are really straight. Next, let's go ahead, and what we want to do next is connect to this outside corner and this outside corner. So like I said, we always want to connect back to the edges and corners of our shapes. So from there back to there, just like that. And we'll do the same thing from that corner to that corner, and you'll see that our guidelines actually cross each other. And that's exactly what we want, because that draws out our top surface. So what we can do now is we can just erase these guidelines. So you'll see I'll erase it to there, and I'll erase it to right there. And now we have that top surface of our cube in two-point perspective. Now this is why it's a good idea to do these on a separate layer. I'm just doing it on one layer just for just to keep it simple, but if you're doing an actual drawing, you'd probably want to create a separate layer for all of your guidelines. And then on top of that, on another layer, you could go ahead and just start drawing in your actual drawing by hand. So if you're drawing buildings or a car or people or whatever it is that you're drawing in perspective, you could draw that on a separate layer and then just have your guidelines on a different layer that you can turn off and on. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and try something like a cylinder. So for a cylinder, we need to start by drawing a cube, because in 2-point perspective, we're no longer just drawing a circle and then having that run off to a 1-point perspective. What we need to do is we need to draw that circle side of the form in perspective. So let's go ahead and start by just drawing a square surface in perspective. So I'm going to start by drawing a straight down line like this, and then I'll connect that back to here, back to my vanishing point. Like that. Then I'll go ahead and draw a straight line coming like that. And then what I want to do is I want to connect a line from here to that corner, so corner to corner and corner to corner, so that we create an X. So that way we get a good idea of where the center of this is. And what we want to do now is we want to basically draw a circle shape. And based off of this X shape or these triangles, that's going to help us guide us in drawing the circle. So for example, this quarter right here is going to be a lot larger than the quarter on this side. And we also want to make sure that the center edge of the circle in each quarter touches the edge of the square. So just like that. So as you can see, if we were to now erase this, what we're going to get is we're going to get sort of an oval shape. And this oval shape is actually kind of tilted a little bit. At least it looks like it's tilted when you're thinking about it in 2D. But since this is a three-dimensional form, it's actually just a circle in perspective. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and connect from this edge back to this vanishing point, just like that. And then do the same thing up here. And then we want to just take this curve right here and basically copy it as best we can further down the line. Something like that. We can also go ahead and erase out this X as well. We don't need that anymore. Unless you wanted to keep it there. It looks kind of cool. We can go ahead and erase all of these guidelines. Alright, perfect. So there you go. There's a cylinder in 2-point perspective. So you could basically apply this to any type of shape. It gets a little bit more complicated if your shape is going to be more organic, but the concept is the same as 1-point perspective. The only thing is you have to apply the second plane of perspective to the other surface. You can't just have a straight-on view of a surface and then have the other surface vanishing to a vanishing point. Both planes or surfaces have to vanish off to a vanishing point. All right, let's have a look at some real-world examples. So right here, I have a photograph of a kitchen, and we're going to draw on top of this and figure out where the horizon line is, and we're also going to figure out where the vanishing points are based off this photograph. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer above this. I'm going to fill it with white just like I did on the last photograph, and I'll bring down the opacity on that layer so that way it just kind of softens up that photograph so you guys can see it. See my drawing lines a little bit better. I'll go ahead and grab a red just so it stands out more. And let's go ahead and begin. So what we need to do is we basically need to draw straight lines that follow all the lines in this photograph and kind of see where they match up. Now, because we don't actually know where the horizon line is or the vanishing points, they might not line up perfectly because we can't follow those lines perfectly, but we should get a pretty good idea of where those are. So let's go ahead and let's just start by drawing a line, for example, right here. Now you'll notice that I have a bunch of extra space around my photograph, and that's because the vanishing points are going to be off of the photograph. So they're going to be out here and out here. So we need to make sure that we have enough space to draw those. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the bottom of this island in the kitchen. Bring my brush size down. I'm going to go ahead and just click there. And you can see that I'm going to have to keep trying to experiment and clicking in different areas until I finally get it to line up with the bottom of this island. So right about there looks good, something like that. Then we'll move up here to this line surface, and we want to try to follow that line out somewhere around there. So try that again. And we're just going to have to keep giving it a try until we finally kind of figure out where that is. Now we can go ahead and do like this, for example, underneath the bottom of this cabinet up on the wall. Kind of follow that line. And it looks like they're all meeting up about right here. You can see where they're all kind of touching together right there. So that looks like that's going to be our vanishing point on this side. We can also just go ahead and click right there and draw a straight line coming across like that. And now we know that that's probably our horizon line, somewhere right about there. So this helps us decide where the vanishing point is going to be on the left side now, because we can go ahead and click on this corner right here of the island, and then we know that it needs to connect on this vanishing line at some point. So we can go ahead, let's maybe try out there, and it actually needs to come out a little bit further. And it actually needs to come out even further than that. So go ahead and try clear out here. And it actually needs to come out even further. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select all of these layers, and I'm just going to move them over real quick just so we have a little bit more space on this left side. Come back to my layer where I'm drawing my red lines. I'm going to go ahead and extend this horizon line out even further because that vanishing point is further out. So let's go ahead and try connecting out to there, and it's getting pretty close. So I think right about there is close enough. So our vanishing point is basically clear out here on this edge of our canvas, and same with this one. So you can see how most of the time your vanishing points aren't actually going to be on the page. In fact, if they are on the page, it's going to look too extreme. You're going to get a cube that looks something like this, and you just don't really ever see stuff like that in real life unless you have some sort of an extreme lens on. So we usually want our vanishing points to be off the page. So let's go ahead and let's continue. So now we can go ahead and connect this corner and connect it all the way back out to this vanishing point. And as you can see, it's a little bit off. So what we need to do is we need to draw a line where that kind of follows it a little bit better. And like I said, because we don't actually know the exact vanishing points, these might be off a little bit because we can't draw these perfect straight lines. So we just kind of have to get the average of them all and then kind of figure out where they all kind of cross. So this is making it seem like the vanishing point is there, and this is making it seem like the vanishing point is there. So it's probably somewhere about in between. We're not going to ever know for sure just because we didn't start drawing this with our own vanishing points. We're trying to figure out where they are. So let's go ahead and we can try redrawing all of these lines with that vanishing point, and we'll see how they line up. So we'll go ahead and start on this corner, connect it to that vanishing point, and we'll do the same thing on the bottom. So it's not completely perfect, but it's close enough. Go ahead and connect for the top surface of our island. And then we can go ahead and like this surface, or this line right there, is actually going to connect back to this vanishing point. Just like that, so we get that line there. We can do the top surface of this cabinet. And then we can go ahead and connect these with straight lines coming down to make up the island. Same with over here, we can go ahead and have a straight line coming down like that, like that. This can connect back to that vanishing point. We can connect that down. So I'm not going to draw the entire kitchen, but just to show you some of these basic forms that are in there. So we can go ahead and erase all of this. We can even erase our horizon line at this point. We just want to see these forms in perspective. So now you can see, we can even go ahead and let's just turn the opacity up on that so we can only see our drawing. Now you can see we have the basic forms for what that kitchen was. So if we wanted to, if we were drawing this kitchen, for example, we could start by drawing out these guidelines for the perspective in the kitchen, and then from there we can start adding in more detail, such as the sink faucet, the other cabinets. We would block all that out in perspective with our guidelines, but that way we make sure that everything looks like it's in correct perspective. All right, that brings us to the end of this lecture. Now, what I want you to do for an assignment is I want you to go and find an example of 1-point perspective in a photograph and an example of 2-point perspective. And I want you to import those into Photoshop and do what I just did here and add a layer on top of that and try to find where the horizon line is, try to figure out where the vanishing points are. And once you start actually studying from life, you're gonna start having an even better understanding of perspective. Thanks for watching this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.